I don't know. I totally new to Azure.
Okay.
So, but I had working like I had some great home resources, but uh, basically I don't know what is the internal basic things
Mm-hmm.
because I have some previous experience. I mean, I already have experience in AWS, so that's why I work working. I mean, creating some servers in Azure. Otherwise, I don't get any additional information about
You
Azure.
already know Azure, right? Azure architecture, regions, availability, on what exactly it is.
Yes, yes,
Those those things.
correct.
You can understand, right? Without, I mean, you see what we are doing in the first session. What is Azure architecture, and under that, what geographically, what it is, what is region, what is availability zone,
No,
and
these
those
are
things we have discussed.
I know it's not sure, but the Azure the ID based. That's why I have confused. I did not get the standard. I mean, Azure
Azure
ID
ID.
still I searching what is the exact meaning of the Azure ID. What is the usage? These
What?
architecture and regions there is no issue.
Okay, okay, I'm not getting your question. Can you tell me again?
No, no, sir. That means this slide is these questions are not issue. I know these questions, the answer of these questions. So, sure. I
Okay,
mean, I just need the basic of the enter ID.
okay, and tried on the immediate, right?
Yeah, yeah, correct.
Okay.
Enter ID in the
So,
resource group subscription. So that's I don't know the meaning of the meaning.
okay, let's say this is Azure portal, right?
Okay, okay.
Yeah. And now we see basically what is ARM templates. You see, just remember this is resource manager in the Azure. So under the resource manager, we have everything. We can see service groups, management groups, subscriptions, whatever the things we see in the Azure. So everything we can observe here because any operation you do in the cloud portal, this is the control plane for the Azure cloud. The request first comes on top of Azure Resource Manager, then it will validate your request from any service. I'm saying from any service you put any request. First, it will validate that request and it try to deploy the requirement. So like that it works. That's why I told you ARM is an important Azure Resource Manager. You see subscription. Under subscription only we will have resource groups and resources and everything will manage. And you see management groups. This is also one of the hierarchy we can say. Under the management group only, we will have subscriptions. Let's say in a single Azure account, you have number of projects means you go with the Azure management groups. One group is for one project, another is for other project. Like that, you can manage based on the compliant requirement. And I mean, how you wanted to isolate the projects and all based on the requirement, you do management groups. So management group is nothing but it will isolate all your resources and I mean different kind of subscriptions we can say. Subscription is nothing but where you pay your bill for the resources, right? So under subscription only, you go and create the resource groups where you have number of resources will be there, like virtual machine, AKS cluster, and any VPC, VNets, and subnets, and many things within that, and also other resources. Everything will be created under resource group only. Without resource group, it won't create. Whether you don't select the resource group also, by default, it will go and create in the default resource group, any resource. That's how it should be. Next, we go into the security part and ID. You just search Enter ID, we will get something like this, right? So this is enter ID. Enter ID is earlier it was like something active directory, likewise it was coming. Now it is enter ID. So this was it's my user. So that's why I'm getting this is default directory and this is a tenant ID. You can see here also tenant ID. The same thing in matching rate, default directory tenant ID 039927 like that. Every account will have a unique tenant ID. If you go and log in with your Azure credentials, you will have a tenant ID. In many places in the DevOps or any configuration side, you use tenant ID as a reference. So that's why I'm specifically comparing. When you click on your name in the right in the top corner, and also you see in the Active Directory, you can see same tenant ID. You click on the users, you'll see only one name. This is principal name. It's by default it is created. So when you go and in a company account, generally you can see n number of users here and groups, applications, devices. Likewise, you can see number of. I will show you that one also comparatively. Just observe here. You able to see my screen, right, guys?
Yes.
Did you observe or comparison with empty users and or nothing? Hello. Guys, you can see my screen, right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, sorry. It was disconnected for some reason. Okay. Yeah, you see, generally here this is an active directory we can say, and under this normally we can see this is the tenant ID for reference as I mentioned. For every user who joins in our company, if you wanted to give any Azure access, you directly go and add user here. Let's say, like only admins can have the privileges, create a new user, and invite external user. Those things you can do. Okay, if you go here and you click on this, let's say I'm going to create some user. Let's say SUJAN 2. Default password it will give, but you have to select whatever you want. You have to give the both the password and this one. Automatically it will generate. Later also you can change it. These are things whether you can give or not. You have to add it as a member or group or guest, something like that you can select. And if we go in organization, we'll select job title, company, and employee ID, employee. I mean, for reference and tracking only, we will give these locations. I mean, these are details. And address also it will ask. If you wanted to add same person to any group or any role, we can choose right now here only. Why? Because in any organization, as admin, we will see number of groups usually. Groups in the sense one group is for developers, one for admins group. Likewise, the number of groups will be there. You see here the groups. You can see around 500 plus groups are there, right? And you click here. Likewise, the number of users will be there. The same way, groups also will be there for us. So, with respect to the group, we will add the same people while creating you also. That's what it is showing here. And also role also we can give. You know there will be number of roles, right? There's the first one you see agent ID administrator and agent ID developer, administrators, reader. Likewise, number of roles we will have. If you see that also we'll discuss. What is role, what is policy, and those things you will be seeing here. If you give this cloud application administrator, you can manage many things. If you will be a admin, Azure admin, then you'll have administrator access only. If you want, you can search directly here, administrator like that. If you see this one, Azure ID administrator, it manage all aspects of agent in a tenant. This is tenant. One tenant, whatever the tenant we will have here, default tenant. You can see all the agents. You can manage all aspects of agents, identifying lifecycle operations and everything you can manage. If you see agent registry administrator, so you can manage everything in the Azure Entra ID. That's what it is saying. And application administrator. Application administrator means here you can see something, right? Let me show. Apart from creating this users and groups, you will have these applications also, enterprise application and app registrations. You know, one app registration is there, right? So app registration is nothing but service principal. Did you heard about? When you are talking about Azure, so within the same Azure, one resource to another resource, we use manage identity to connect. I'll show you otherwise. Guys, try to respond. Maybe I'll think that you are listening or you are sharing the call. No, this is a managed identity. So it is nothing but when you, let's say you have two resources. One is Azure Kubernetes Service and one is Azure Key Vault. You wanted to fetch the secrets from the Key Vault dynamically. Let's say you have a one front-end and back-end application that is deployed in the Azure Kubernetes cluster, right? The back-end application needed the secrets. So you are storing your secrets in the Azure Key Vault. So when you fetch that, when you keep those secrets in the Azure Key Vault, for authentication from the Kubernetes cluster to Key Vault, the media will be managed identity comes into the picture. I'm saying example for these two services, but any resource in the entire Azure cloud platform, one resource to another resource, we will use Azure managed identity effectively. We have other options also like Azure service principal also we can use, but Azure service principal better we use for third party applications and between Azure cloud. Okay, clear.
Okay.
Clear means tell me clear. Why? Because I'm coming one by one. Let's say what is security, what is Azure managed identity, what is service principal. Those things should be clear. Maybe in a further session we will use same thing for configurations and all. We'll cover everything. Okay. So this is managed identity. You just read if you want. User assigned managed identities enable Azure resources to enable Azure resource like a case cluster is one resource to authenticate the cloud services like Azure Key Vault without storing credentials in a code. Without any storing the credentials like password and passphrase, you directly give the managed identity. That will do is work in the backend. You just given the identity name. This type of managed entities are created as a standalone Azure resources and have their own life cycle. A single resource like virtual machine can utilize multiple user assigned managed identities. Similarly, a single user assigned managed identity can be shared across multiple resources. You see, one managed entity can be authenticate with the multiple resources. Only Azure AKS cluster needed will have one managed entity to authenticate with the Azure Key Vault, right? That also can, the cluster also AKS cluster will have same authentication method with other services. Let's say ACR will be there, Azure Container Registry. You wanted to pull the Docker image from the ACR into the AKS Kubernetes cluster. Correct? There also managed identity only will be work. for authentication. Likewise, one identity can be connect the multiple resources with the same identity. That is what it is saying. You want, you can create one managed identity. You select any one resource group like that. Let's say this default resource group only one we have, and name of the identity ID one we can give, and this is a region, and scope is regional scope, and resource is not there, right? We can create some resource also. Because I did not create any resources set, right? That's why it is showing none. You can give some tags also, like VM1 like that. Let's say you are creating for dev1 QA environment, you can give dev or QA like that also, you can give as per your requirement. The tags is nothing but for your identification only. That's all. We don't use in any configurations also. That will take time for the validation. That will create. So this is how identity will be created. Now we look into the same active directory only. We come into here again. We'll see theoretically, and then we'll look into the in the Azure cloud. Yeah, Enter ID is not just a directory. It is the issuer of every token Azure Resource Manager trusts. A user signs in and receives a token, an application registered as a service principal in the tenant, and receives a token via client credentials. Client credentials and federated credentials and managed identity. You see, right? These are the authentication methods. We just discussed about the managed identity, and we see this federation and also client credentials. Client credentials is nothing but once you created as a user, you will have one username and password, right? That is the client credential. I'll tell you about the federated credentials also. That will be a different security method. We'll discuss after this. A workload identity federation lets external systems exchange their own OIDC tokens for an Entra token without a stored secret. Yeah, this is also one of the important feature you need to understand. Guys, are you in sync?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, okay. You see this one, workload identity federation. What it do? Let's say Azure resources will be in the Azure cloud. So that we wanted to talk with the third-party application like GitHub Actions, GitLab, AWS. Third-party application you wanted to communicate means you will select on the workload identity federation. This is one feature in the Azure Entra ID itself. So you do select that and you give the required client ID, tenant ID for identification in the third-party application, and then you integrate with the Azure. So just remember workload identity federation. What it will do, that will allow you to integrate with the third-party application with your Azure cloud. We'll see practically in coming slides. watch out for common pitfalls. You just see here, the managed identities are first class identities backed by Azure infrastructure. This is the first part of. This is the actually advantage between the AWS and Azure. In AWS, we don't see this kind of similar security as we have in the Azure. You can't see this managed identity kind of security in the AWS. So that's why Azure is better for security compared with AWS. Nowadays, many companies are choosing Azure only, right? So we have similar features, not only the managed identity, I'm saying, we have a dedicated security features in the Azure. When you talk about this Azure managed identity, from one resource to another resource and one resource to multiple resource, you can authenticate with the between the resources, right? And now it is saying that managed identity are first-class identities backed by the Azure infrastructure. So in the same managed identity, we have two things. One is system identity, system assigned identity, and other is user assigned identity. This will be the default one, system assigned. This will be tied for one. I mean, this will be tied for a single resource. When you go with a user as an assigned identity, is a standalone resource that can be attached to many. This is what we have discussed. One resource, let's say AKS cluster, it needed 2 to 3 resources to authenticate and to deploy the application successfully. It needs a image, Docker image from the ACR. It needs a secrets dynamically during runtime from the key vault. Like, well, it needs some many things, right? Then we use user assigned managed identity that will be attached with the multiple services for authentication. This is the difference between these two: system assigned and user assigned. Next, as we see identities and groups, right? Groups can be security or Microsoft 365, assigned or dynamic. Yeah, for now we will see that. I will add this groups topic now, maybe when we see in the portal directly. So I need to show something practically there. Yeah, just see this architecture diagram better that. This is the user and he's authenticating with the service principal or API. The access app that will be directed to the enter ID endpoint, and then as per the policy, conditional access engine and issue token and challenge. I mean, any MFA and device check, those things are configured, and this is the entire Microsoft Azure. This enter ID will work. How it responds. Let's say you are a user, you are going to access any application. You just click that browser. You just click that link in the browser. That first will check the authentication, right? First level authentication. That will first check that service principal, whether the code is valid, I mean, the token is valid or not. First, that will verify. Otherwise, you'll get error AAD and your user is not added in the Azure Active Directory or correct group like that. You'll get an error in the browser itself. If that is validated, then that will go to the enter ID. So from there, again, it will validate all the policies and issue tokens. Issue token in the sense when you create any app registration, there you will get the client ID, client secret, and tenant ID. Tenant ID, it's normal thing you already seen in the browser, right? When you create the app registration, you have a client ID and a client secret. That we need to configure in the Azure Active Directory group configuration level. In the any application side, I'm saying. So that we have to see. And if you configure any two-step authentication, that will ask the MFA. After all this validation, then only you can access the application. That's how it works. This is the flow. Actually, as an admin, what the requirement is, you have to give the this permissions and to the user who can application Azure. As we see roles, right? Some roles here. Let's create any app registrations. Let's say app1. It's a single directory. You can see you can select anything like a single directory, multiple tenant ID, enter ID, and personal accounts only. Any enter ID tenant. We have currently I'm in the single tenant only and default directory. You see here, it's a default directory tenant. So that's why I'm choosing here only. If I have other tenants also, I can select and I can create this app registration under that for authentication. Okay. And this is the URL we have to give, application URL like that. We have a single page application, web, public, client, and we have different options. If you are creating, this for your front end application, you go with the single page application only. Why? Because all front ends are built with nowadays React and this React will be there, right? The front end framework where you use this single page application framework only in their code side. So that's why we choose this SPA and we give their front end URL and then we create it. I'll just give something. It should be valid only. Otherwise, it won't. It will take anything, but it should be valid from application perspective. What I got one application ID and object ID and tenant ID, right? This is my client ID. This needs to be configured. When you go internally, we have many things here. Authentication, front end side, we don't look into much here. Yeah, these are the permissions and everything. You have to look into it when it will be a see the default role for this cloud application administrator can create and manage all aspects of app registrations and enterprise apps except app proxy. So this app registration is having this RBAC role. Everywhere we are seeing the RBAC, right? Rollback access control. It's nothing but the same thing where whatever if you see confirm RBAC scope is correct before granting access broadly. So we have to give the limited access as admin. We should have a main concern is access. We should not give the full access to the anyone. That's why RBS is the most important. And what, let's say I'm currently having the cloud administrator, application administrator, even though I'm having a limited access only, not for app proxy, and can create, manage all aspects of the app registrations. That's how it is. And we will do this demo. What is user assigned manage identity, and we will assign it to the one storage blob data reader, a storage account, attach that manage identity to a virtual machine, and from the VM we will call that endpoint to fetch the token and read the blob. So this is thing how the manage identity will work. So we will do the demo at the end, or coming session also will do. You know how the CLI and this thing will work. In Azure portal itself, when you go and click here, you'll have a cloud shell. When you open the cloud shell, you don't need to authenticate with the either PowerShell or Bash. You can choose which one is your comforted, and you can select your subscription directly here, and you can apply. Usually, we don't need any storage account required. For other operations, it needed. And also, you can open in the your VS Code also, this one in the web. So instead of go and create this, that resource, you can give everything from the CLI itself. So some sample commands we can see here. Create VNet. For that, we use this command, Azure Network VNet, and we can run this command. If you want, we can try. No, it's not coming. You can observe the sessions also. That's why I given without giving resource group. I just given the command. We created managed identity, right? That was created. If you create any resource, that will say it considered as a deployment. You see, your deployment is completed, and that is created like it is. You see it's creating now. I just given the command Azure network vnet create -g and the resource group name. Resource group name means it's by default this resource group name is there. If you want, we can create and give that one also. So we will have a different resource groups usually. And you go in the resource groups. Resource group manager, we'll have this default one. We can create different things. Let's say dev. Usually we use with respect to the application group or else environment and this kind of things we will create. Now it's, I mean, group is created is saying it will take a few seconds to upload here, update here. You have to refresh and see. So whatever the resource group you will select here, the same thing it will create. You see this one also creating it. Sometimes it will take around 2 to 5 minutes to create and to display in the portal. So that's how it will be. Same thing. Once it is created, we have to assign one energy network security rule, create rule, and who can access, what is inbound and outbound rules. Those are not we can control here.
I think we are good to go, Susan. We can ask any doubts, Ramesh or Kiran.
Yeah.